You need to be bored. Sounds crazy, right? But here's the truth. If you never get bored, your life is gonna feel empty. You'll be more depressed, more restless, always chasing something to fill the silence. Boredom is not the enemy. It's the space where your brain finally slows down, where it starts asking the big questions you usually run from. What am I doing with my life? What actually matters to me? Most people hate that feeling. That's why the second they're stuck in traffic or waiting in line, they grab their phone, scroll, swipe, distract. Anything to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But here's the thing. That's exactly why so many people feel lost today. We've killed boredom. We never sit still. And because of that, we've killed meaning too. You want to know why anxiety, depression, emptiness are through the roof? It's because nobody lets themselves be bored anymore. So this isn't about wasting time. It's about saving your mind. If you can sit with boredom, if you can resist that itch to grab your phone every 5 seconds, you'll unlock something most people never will. Clarity, creativity, and maybe even happiness. Point 1. Boredom is the lab of creativity. Here's the truth nobody likes to admit. Boredom isn't wasted time. It's the hidden lab where your brain does its best work. Most people think boredom means nothing's happening, but inside your head, everything is happening. When you're not busy, when you're not distracting yourself, your brain switches into a different mode. Scientists call it the default mode network. It sounds technical, but it's simple. It's your mind's background system, the part that only turns on when you stop filling every second with noise. Think about it. Why do you get your best ideas in the shower, or on a long walk, or while driving in silence? It's because in those moments, your brain finally gets to wander. It's not reacting to a text or scrolling through endless feeds. It's free to connect dots, mix memories, and play with ideas. That wandering is where creativity is born. But here's the problem. We almost never let ourselves get bored anymore. The second we feel it creeping in, we reach for our phones, standing in line, waiting for a friend, even sitting at a red light. We grab that glowing screen. And in doing that, we smother boredom before it has a chance to work. Then we wonder why we feel stuck, uninspired, or burnt out. The answer is simple. We've cut ourselves off from the very state of mind that sparks creativity. Look back at history. Some of the greatest breakthroughs didn't come in moments of intense focus. They came in silence. Einstein took long walks every day, letting his thoughts drift. That's when ideas clicked. Newton wasn't in a lab when gravity struck him. He was sitting under a tree, staring at the world. Writers, artists, philosophers, they all leaned on quiet stretches of time where they had nothing else to do but think. They didn't run from boredom, they used it. And here's the Stoic connection. Marcus Aurelius, leading the Roman Empire, still carved out time to sit with his thoughts and write his meditations. He knew wisdom doesn't grow in noise, it grows in stillness. Seneca warned that life feels short only because we waste it on distractions. To the Stoics, boredom wasn't a curse. It was the doorway to reflection. Now, I get it. Boredom doesn't feel good. At first, it feels like an itch you can't scratch. You get restless, uncomfortable, desperate to reach for your phone. But that discomfort is the point. Just like lifting weights feels painful before you get stronger, sitting with boredom feels hard before it pays off. Push through it, and something shifts. Your mind starts handing you insights you'd never find in the noise. So here's the challenge. When was the last time you let yourself be bored on purpose? Not stuck in a waiting room scrolling your phone. I mean really bored. A walk with no headphones. A workout with no playlist. A coffee break, where the phone stays in your pocket. Try it, even for 10 minutes. At first you'll hate it, but stay with it and watch what happens. Ideas appear, problems untangle, creativity wakes up. Because boredom isn't dead time, it's incubation. It's your brain cooking up solutions and visions in the background, waiting for you to stop drowning it in noise. And if you want to live with more creativity, clarity, and focus, you don't need more apps or hacks. You need to bring boredom back. Point 2. Why we fear silence. Let's be real, boredom scares the hell out of most people, not because it's painful in the physical sense, but because the second life gets quiet, your brain drags you into places you don't want to go. Silence isn't empty. It's loud. It's full of the questions you've been avoiding. Am I living the way I want? Do I really love the life I've built? What happens if I never change? That's why boredom feels uncomfortable, not because nothing's happening, but because too much is happening inside. There's a famous experiment from Harvard that proves it. People were asked to sit in a room alone for 15 minutes. No phones, no books, no distractions, just themselves and their thoughts. In front of them was a button that would give them an electric shock if they pressed it. Here's the shocking part, pun intended. Most participants ended up shocking themselves just to escape the silence. Think about that. People would literally choose pain over facing their own thoughts for a quarter of an hour. That's how deep the fear of boredom runs. And yet, here's the paradox. Those same thoughts we're running from are the ones that hold the key to meaning. You can't discover who you are if you never let the questions rise. You can't fix what's broken if you never stop to see the cracks. But our culture teaches us to avoid that discomfort at all costs. Fill every gap with noise. Keep scrolling, keep moving, never stop. And in doing that, we build a life that looks busy but feels hollow. The Stoics talked about this 2,000 years ago. Seneca wrote that people flee from their own minds like they're running from an enemy, when in reality, the mind is the very place they need to return to. Marcus Aurelius journaled in the dead of night because he knew reflection wasn't optional, it was survival. Epictetus taught that ignoring truth doesn't protect you from it, it only weakens you. They all understood that silence is uncomfortable because it forces you to face reality, but that's exactly why it matters. Let me give you a modern example. You're stuck in traffic. What's the first thing you do? Turn on music, call someone, maybe even sneak a look at your phone at a red light. Anything to not be alone with your thoughts. But what if instead you let the silence hang? What if you actually sat in that discomfort? Sure, your brain might wander to hard places, like, why am I grinding so hard at a job I don't even like? Or, why do I feel lonely even though I'm surrounded by people? At first, that feels brutal, but those questions are your compass. They're the signals pointing you toward change. Here's the kicker. The more you run from boredom, the worse it gets. You can distract yourself for hours, even days, but eventually the silence creeps back in. Only now it feels heavier because you've ignored it longer. That's why people get caught in what psychologists call a doom loop. Avoid silence, feel empty, distract more, feel even emptier. It's a cycle that leads to anxiety, depression, and a life that never feels satisfying no matter how much you cram into it. So maybe the problem isn't boredom itself. Maybe the problem is our fear of what boredom reveals. Because if you're scared to sit with your own thoughts, what does that say? It says you're living in distraction, not in truth. And truth, as uncomfortable as it feels, is the only path to freedom. The Stoics called it slavery to externals. When your peace depends on constant noise and entertainment, you're not in control, you're chained. But when you can handle silence, when you can face the discomfort of your own thoughts, that's when you're truly free. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you feel that wave of boredom, don't run, don't grab your phone, don't drown it out with music. Just sit. Let the questions come. Yeah, they'll sting. They'll poke at the parts of your life you'd rather ignore. But lean in, because that discomfort, that's the doorway to clarity. It's the place where you stop running and start living. Boredom scares us because it's honest, and honesty, even when it hurts, is what sets you free. Point 3. How technology hijacked our brains. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Boredom didn't just fade away on its own. We killed it. Or more accurately, we handed the job to our phones. That little glowing rectangle in your pocket, it's a boredom killer. Every pause, every gap, every 2-second lull in your day, it's right there, begging you to touch it. Waiting in line for coffee, check Instagram, stuck at a red light, peek at your notifications, sitting on the couch, swipe, scroll, repeat. We don't let ourselves feel bored anymore, not even for a heartbeat. At first, it feels harmless. What's the big deal, right? Just a quick check. Just one more scroll. But those quick checks come with a cost. Every time you pull out your phone, you're dodging silence. And silence is where meaning lives. It's where your brain starts asking the questions you've been ignoring and sparking ideas you didn't know you had. The more you block those moments, the less you hear yourself. Over time, life feels noisier on the outside, but emptier on the inside. Here's the science. Your brain loves dopamine. Every notification, every like, every new post, it's a tiny hit. The more you chase it, the more your brain rewires itself to expect constant stimulation. That's why silence feels unbearable now. It's not that life got more boring. It's that your brain has been trained to panic when there's nothing happening. You've been hijacked. And it's not just you, it's everyone. We're living in a culture that treats boredom like a disease when it's actually the cure. Think about your grandparents for a second. They didn't know what was happening in Washington, D.C. every 5 minutes. They didn't wake up and scroll through 1,000 opinions before breakfast. They weren't plugged into world drama 24/7. And you know what? They were fine, probably calmer too. They didn't feel like they were missing out on everything. They weren't drowning in noise. They had space. They had boredom. And in that space, they found meaning. Compare that to today. We freak out if we don't check our phones for 10 minutes. We panic at the idea of being disconnected. But disconnected from what exactly? From a flood of information that 99% of the time doesn't even matter. The irony is, the more connected we are online, the less connected we feel to ourselves. That constant buzz in your pocket isn't life. It's distraction dressed up as urgency. The Stoics would have laughed at us. Imagine Marcus Aurelius sitting down to write his meditations, but every 2 minutes he gets a notification. New comment on your scroll. Breaking news. Someone's angry on Twitter. Do you think he'd have found wisdom? No way. He made time for stillness because he knew that's where clarity comes from. If the Roman emperor could carve out silence, what's our excuse? And here's the real danger. When you never let yourself be bored, you never face the deeper stuff. That nagging emptiness, that sense of something's missing. You smother it with TikTok, Instagram, Netflix, whatever. But the more you smother it, the bigger it grows. That's why rates of anxiety and depression are exploding. Not just because life is hard, but because we've trained ourselves to never stop and think. And if you never think, you never find meaning. So what's the way out? Start reclaiming boredom. Don't let your phone eat every pause in your day. Next time you're waiting in line, don't pull it out. Next time you're walking to your car, keep it in your pocket. At first, it'll feel weird. Your brain will twitch like an addict begging for a fix. But that's the point. It means you're breaking free. Slowly, the silence starts to feel less threatening. Slowly, you start to hear yourself again. Because boredom isn't the enemy. Your phone made you believe that. Boredom is the space where you discover who you are, what matters, and what ideas are hiding in your head. Technology hijacked your brain, but you can take it back. All it takes is a little courage to put the screen down and let silence in. Point 4. Training your boredom muscle. Here's a mindset shift most people have never even considered. Boredom isn't just something that happens to you. It's a skill you can train. Yeah, that's right. Just like discipline, patience, or strength, you can actually get better at being bored. And the better you get, the stronger your mind becomes. Think about it. When you hit the gym for the first time, lifting even a small weight feels impossible. Your muscles ache, you want to quit, and everything in you screams, "This is too much." But if you keep at it, day after day, the same weight that once crushed you feels light. You've built muscle. Boredom works the same way. At first, sitting in silence feels unbearable. You itch for your phone, your thoughts spin, you want out. But if you stick with it, that discomfort turns into clarity. You build a boredom muscle. So, how do you train it? Start small. Don't go for an hour of silence right away. That's like trying to bench press 300 pounds on your first day. Begin with 10 minutes. Leave your phone in the locker while you work out. No music, no podcast, no YouTube. Just you, the weights, and your thoughts. At first, it'll feel brutal. You'll notice how slow time moves. You'll feel restless. But then something shifts. Your brain starts connecting random ideas. You might remember something important. You might solve a problem you've been stuck on. That's your boredom muscle kicking in. Next step, try it during your commute. Instead of blasting music or filling the car with noise, just drive. Let your mind wander, or sit at a coffee shop with nothing but a drink and your thoughts. No phone, no book, no laptop. Watch the people around you. Let your thoughts drift. It feels awkward at first, but that awkwardness is where growth lives. The Stoics practiced this kind of training constantly. Epictetus taught his students to practice discomfort on purpose, so they'd be ready when life threw real challenges their way. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to strip away distractions and return to stillness. To them, boredom wasn't wasted time. It was discipline in disguise, a way to strengthen the mind by resisting the urge to run. And here's the payoff. Once you build this boredom muscle, it starts spilling into every part of your life. Work feels less dull because you're not panicking every time there's a slow moment. Relationships feel deeper because you're not glued to your phone looking for excitement. Even chores, cooking, cleaning, folding laundry, stop feeling like torture. Instead, they become chances to practice presence. You've rewired your brain to see silence as space, not emptiness. But don't get me wrong, it's not easy. Just like working out, there's resistance in the beginning. The first few days without background noise will feel like withdrawal. Your brain will scream, grab the phone, do something, fill the gap. That's dopamine talking, that's addiction. Push through it and you'll notice it quiets down. Then comes the calm, then comes the clarity. So here's my challenge. Treat boredom like a workout. Pick one small part of your day and strip away the distractions. 10 minutes is all it takes. Build from there. Over time, your tolerance grows, your thoughts deepen, and your mind gets stronger. Because boredom isn't weakness. It's resistance training for your brain. And if you train it like a muscle, it'll give you a kind of strength most people will never know. Point 5. Rediscovering simple joys. Here's the crazy paradox. The more you run from boredom, the more your whole life starts to feel boring. Sounds backwards, right? But think about it. When you're hooked on constant stimulation, endless scrolling, non-stop music, new videos every 30 seconds, your brain gets wired to expect fireworks all the time. And when the fireworks aren't there, regular life feels flat. Work feels dull. Relationships feel slow. Even eating a meal without a screen feels like torture. It's not because life lost its spark. It's because we trained ourselves to believe that only high-speed entertainment counts as interesting. But when you lean into boredom, something surprising happens. The small, ordinary stuff starts to feel alive again. That morning coffee, you actually taste it. That walk around the block, you notice the way the air feels, the way the light hits the trees. Sitting down with a friend. Instead of half listening while checking your phone, you're really there. You laugh deeper, you listen better. Boredom resets your system. It lowers the threshold for what feels rewarding, and suddenly the little things feel like a gift again. This isn't some fluffy idea. It's exactly what the Stoics were pointing to 2,000 years ago. Seneca wrote that life isn't short. We just waste most of it on distractions. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to appreciate the simple blessings. Waking up, breathing, watching the sunrise. They knew joy wasn't in chasing constant highs, but in learning to value what's right in front of you. And boredom, uncomfortable as it feels, is what reteaches you how to notice. Here's the modern tragedy. We've lost that ability. We eat meals while scrolling TikTok. We walk down the street with earbuds blasting, lost in someone else's world. We can't even stand in line without pulling out a phone. It's like we're terrified of just being there, in the moment. And because of that, we miss life as it's happening. We trade reality for distraction, and then wonder why we feel so restless. But boredom flips the script. When you stop numbing every quiet moment, you start to feel the richness in things you used to overlook. Washing the dishes becomes calming instead of annoying. Folding laundry feels grounding instead of dull. Even sitting in traffic can shift from stress to reflection. That's the hidden gift of boredom. It trains your brain to find beauty in the ordinary. Let me give you an example. Imagine sitting on your porch with no phone, no music, nothing to do. At first, it feels weird. Your hand twitches for your pocket. Your mind screams, "Grab the screen." But then, slowly, something shifts. You notice the sound of birds. You notice the way the wind moves through the trees. You notice your own breath slowing down. And suddenly, you're not bored anymore. You're present. You're alive in the moment. That's what boredom gives you, the ability to experience life instead of constantly trying to escape it. And here's the kicker. Once you've built that muscle, you stop chasing entertainment like a drug. You don't need every weekend to be packed with crazy plans. You don't need every meal to be Instagram-worthy. You start enjoying the slow, simple stuff. And ironically, that brings you more happiness than the constant chase ever did. Because joy isn't in intensity, it's in presence. So the next time boredom creeps in, don't rush to kill it. Let it sit. Notice what's around you. Taste your food. Feel the ground under your feet. Look someone in the eye without distraction. The little things you've been ignoring are the big things. And boredom is the reset button that lets you see them again. Because life isn't about chasing endless excitement. It's about learning to love the ordinary. And boredom, the very thing you're running from, is the teacher that shows you how. Point 6. Boredom and purpose. Here's the deeper side of boredom that most people never see. It's not just about creativity or enjoying the simple stuff. Boredom is the doorway to purpose. When everything goes quiet, when the distractions fade, your mind naturally drifts toward the biggest questions. Why am I here? What's the point of all this? Am I living in line with what actually matters to me? Those questions aren't small talk. They're the blueprint of your life. And if you keep avoiding boredom, you never get around to asking them. That's why so many people today feel lost. We're drowning in stimulation, but starving for meaning. Every moment is filled, scrolling, streaming, swiping, yet when the noise stops, there's that hollow feeling. That emptiness isn't random. It's your soul tapping you on the shoulder saying, "Hey, you're missing the point." And boredom, uncomfortable as it feels, is what forces you to finally listen. The Stoics were masters at this. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, carved out quiet moments every night to write in his meditations. Those writings weren't about politics or war. They were about meaning, about how to live, what to value, what kind of person he wanted to be. He let boredom guide him toward purpose. Seneca said the same thing, that if you never pause, if you never reflect, you end up chasing a life that doesn't belong to you. Epictetus warned that avoiding the truth doesn't protect you, it just delays the reckoning. These men weren't scared of silence, they used it to anchor their lives. Think about your own life. When do those big thoughts usually hit you? It's not while you're binge-watching Netflix or checking your phone. It's when you're lying awake at night, when you're staring out the window on a quiet morning, when you're stuck in traffic with nothing but your own head. That's boredom nudging you toward clarity. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's also where direction begins. Here's the danger of avoiding it. If you never let yourself be bored, you drift. You chase what everyone else is chasing, money, status, likes, without ever asking if that's what you really want, and years go by. One day, you wake up realizing you built a life that looks full but feels empty. That's the cost of killing boredom. You kill the questions that give life meaning. But if you let yourself sit in the silence, if you lean into the discomfort, something shifts. You start seeing the gap between the life you're living and the life you want. Maybe you realize you're stuck in a job that drains you. Maybe you see that you've been ignoring relationships that matter. Maybe you feel that pull toward a dream you've buried. Those realizations hurt, but they also heal. They give you a map. They point you toward purpose. Here's a simple practice. Set aside 15 minutes a day with no distractions, no phone, no music, no book, just you and your thoughts. At first, it'll feel unbearable. Your brain will fight you. But if you stay with it, the noise dies down and the deeper questions rise. Don't run from them. Write them down. Reflect on them. That's how you start uncovering what matters. Because at the end of the day, a life without purpose is just motion without direction. Boredom, as uncomfortable as it feels, is the pause that lets you check your compass. It's the silence that tells you if you're heading the right way, or if it's time to turn around. So the next time you feel bored, don't just see it as wasted time. See it as a signal, a chance to step back, ask the hard questions, and realign your life. Because boredom isn't just emptiness, it's the space where purpose finally has room to speak. Point 7. The hidden power of silence in relationships. Here's something most people overlook. Boredom isn't just about your personal growth. It plays a huge role in your relationships too. Think about how often we run from silence when we're with other people. You're sitting at dinner and there's a pause in the conversation. What happens? Almost instantly, someone grabs their phone, or they change the subject to something shallow just to fill the gap. We're terrified of quiet moments with each other, as if silence means something's wrong. But the truth is, silence can be the most powerful connector. Real relationships aren't built on constant entertainment. They're built on presence, and presence often means sitting in quiet without feeling the need to fill it. When you can be bored with someone and still feel comfortable, that's when you know the bond is real. Couples who can sit on the couch together, not talking, not scrolling, just being, they're often the ones who last. Friends who can share long drives without forcing conversation. That's depth. The silence isn't awkward, it's trust. But we've trained ourselves to fear those pauses. Social media, texting, and non-stop stimulation make us feel like we always need to perform, to entertain, to fill every gap with noise. That pressure seeps into our relationships. We expect constant excitement, constant conversation, constant good vibes. And when it's not there, we panic. We think something's wrong. But maybe nothing's wrong. Maybe it's just silence doing its quiet work. The Stoics touched on this too, though in their own way. Marcus Aurelius wrote that being with others is about being fully present, not distracted. Epictetus reminded his students that true friendship is tested in stillness, not just in laughter or action. To them, silence wasn't absence, it was space, space where authenticity could breathe. And that idea feels even more relevant today, when every dinner table is lit by the glow of phones instead of faces. Think about your closest connections. When was the last time you shared silence without reaching for a device? When was the last time you let a pause hang in a conversation instead of rushing to fill it? Most of us can't remember because we've trained ourselves to believe silence equals awkwardness. But the strongest bonds aren't scared of awkwardness. They lean into it. They let it soften into comfort. Here's the practical side. Try leaving your phone in another room when you sit down to eat with someone. At first, it might feel weird. You'll be tempted to check it, to distract yourself when conversation slows. But if you resist, you'll notice something. The pauses become part of the rhythm. You laugh more, you listen more, you actually see the person in front of you. Or try this with a friend. Go for a walk with no music, no distractions, and don't force conversation. Just be together. See what comes up naturally. Boredom in relationships isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of realness. The fireworks of new love, the constant excitement of fresh friendships, those things fade. What lasts is whether you can sit in the ordinary together, whether you can handle silence without needing to escape it. That's not boring. That's intimacy. And here's the big lesson. If you can't handle silence with yourself, you'll struggle to handle it with others. That's why so many relationships feel shallow today. People don't know how to be still, so they distract themselves and each other to death. But if you can practice boredom on your own, you bring that strength into your connections. You create space where silence feels safe, where presence feels natural. So don't run from the quiet moments with people. Lean into them, because the hidden power of silence isn't distance, it's depth. And when you can be bored together and still feel close, that's when you know you found something real. Point 8. Boredom as emotional detox. Here's a way to think about boredom you probably haven't considered. It's like a detox for your emotions. When you're constantly distracted, constantly entertained, you never actually let yourself process what's going on inside. The stress piles up, the anxiety simmers under the surface, the little frustrations of the day get buried, and instead of dealing with them, you drown them out with noise. Another playlist, another scroll, another video. It feels easier in the moment, but over time, all that unprocessed stuff builds into a heavy weight. That's why so many people feel drained, restless, even when nothing big is wrong. Their emotions are stuck in storage, collecting interest. Boredom is the pause that lets all that out. When you sit in silence, when you allow yourself to be bored, your mind finally has the space to process. The thoughts you've been avoiding bubble up. The feelings you've been suppressing come forward. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. At first, it feels like chaos in your head. But that's the point. That's the cleanse. Just like your body needs rest to heal, your mind needs boredom to release. Think of it like this. Imagine your brain is a room. Every time you distract yourself, you're throwing clutter into that room without ever cleaning it. Social media, work stress, worries, insecurities, all of it just gets shoved in. Eventually, there's no space left. Boredom is the act of walking into that messy room and finally sorting through the junk. It's not fun at first. You'll find things you'd rather not face, but when you do, you clear space for peace. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote that people exhaust themselves chasing distractions because they don't want to face their own inner mess. Epictetus taught that freedom comes not from avoiding discomfort, but from working through it. And Marcus Aurelius. His journaling wasn't just philosophy, it was emotional detox. Page after page, he sat with his own thoughts, facing them, cleaning them out, making space for clarity. Here's the problem today. We confuse numbing with healing. We think that by keeping busy, by staying entertained, we're protecting ourselves from stress. But really, we're just bottling it up. And the more you bottle, the bigger the explosion when it finally cracks. That's why burnout hits so hard. That's why people break down out of nowhere. They never gave themselves boredom to process. So how do you use boredom as detox? Simple. Create intentional space. Take 15 minutes with no phone, no music, no distractions. Just sit. At first, it'll feel overwhelming. Your thoughts will race. You'll feel restless. That's the emotional clutter showing itself. Don't run from it. Let it come. Breathe through it. Write down what surfaces if you need to. That's the cleanse beginning. Over time, those sessions become lighter. The noise fades. And in its place, peace grows. Think of it like fasting. The first few hours feel rough. Your body craves food. But then your system resets. Your body starts repairing. Boredom does the same thing for your mind. At first, it feels like withdrawal from noise. But then, it clears out the junk, resets your emotional balance, and leaves you lighter. So the next time you feel boredom creeping in, don't smother it. Let it work. Let it bring up the stuff you've been hiding. It won't be comfortable, but comfort isn't the goal. Clarity is. And clarity only comes when you give yourself the space to feel. Because boredom isn't just a pause, it's a purge. And if you let it, it will cleanse your mind in ways no distraction ever could. Point 9. The link between boredom and discipline. Here's something most people never realize. Your ability to handle boredom is directly connected to your level of discipline. Think about it. Every goal you want in life, building a career, getting fit, learning a skill, saving money, requires doing things that are repetitive, slow, and boring. Discipline is about showing up even when it's not exciting. And if you can't handle boredom, you'll quit every time things stop feeling fun. That's why so many people bounce from one thing to another. They start a workout plan, get hyped for a week, then drop it because the routine feels dull. They start reading a book, but after a few chapters, they grab their phone because it's easier. They dream of building a business, but when the grind sets in, spreadsheets, emails, long nights with no reward yet, they walk away. It's not that they don't want success. It's that they can't handle boredom long enough to build it. The truth is, success is built on boredom. Ask any athlete. Training is the same drills day after day. Ask any musician. Hours of practicing scales, not just playing on stage. Ask any entrepreneur. Long nights of unglamorous work before anything takes off. The people who win aren't the ones who feel motivated every day. They're the ones who can sit with boredom and keep going anyway. The Stoics understood this connection better than anyone. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from controlling your impulses, not from chasing excitement. Marcus Aurelius wrote about doing your duty even when it feels dull, because that's what builds character. Discipline to them wasn't glamorous, it was persistence. It was the ability to keep walking the path even when the path felt ordinary. And boredom, that was the test. If you could endure it, you could endure anything. Think about your own life. How many times have you quit something because it felt boring? The gym, a class, a project. But what if that boredom wasn't a signal to stop? What if it was proof you were on the right track? Because here's the secret. Boredom is the price of mastery. If you can pay that price, you can achieve things most people only dream of. If you can't, you'll keep chasing shiny new things without ever finishing what you start. So how do you build this discipline through boredom? Practice it like a workout. When you're doing something repetitive, studying, training, working, and the boredom creeps in, don't run, don't grab your phone, sit with it, keep going. Notice how your brain begs for distraction. Notice how uncomfortable it feels. And then remind yourself, this is the test. This is where discipline is built. Every time you push through that wall, you're getting stronger. And here's the payoff. Once you train yourself to handle boredom, you become unstoppable. You don't need constant motivation. You don't need every day to feel exciting. You can keep showing up brick by brick until you've built something that lasts. While everyone else is chasing the next dopamine hit, you're quietly building a life of substance. So the next time you feel bored in the middle of the grind, don't see it as a problem. See it as a signal. It means you're in the zone where discipline is forged. And if you can stay there, if you can outlast boredom, you'll achieve things that others give up on. Because discipline isn't about hype. It's about patience. And boredom, uncomfortable as it feels, is the training ground where patience becomes power. Point 10. Boredom and art. Here's something wild to think about. Boredom has always been the secret fuel behind art, literature, and philosophy. Some of the most powerful creations in human history didn't come out of chaos or non-stop action. They came out of stillness. They came from people sitting with nothing to distract them, letting their minds wander until something new was born. In other words, boredom isn't just a personal tool. It's been a driving force of culture itself. Think about writers. Do you know how many hours they spend staring at a blank page? Not typing, not scrolling, not being productive, just sitting there, bored, waiting for the words to show up. And when they do, the magic happens. Painters, too. They spend hours in silence, just looking at a canvas, bored enough to let new images emerge. Musicians. They play the same scale over and over until the boredom breaks into rhythm and beauty. Art doesn't come from constant stimulation. It comes from people who dared to sit in the quiet long enough to hear something new. History is full of examples. Beethoven composed some of his greatest music when he was isolated, with nothing but silence around him. Dostoevsky wrote his novels after long periods of solitude. Even the Stoics, philosophers, not artists in the traditional sense, turned boredom into wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, sitting alone at night, scribbling his thoughts, never knew his private reflections would become one of the most enduring works of philosophy. That's art born from silence. And here's the twist. Boredom doesn't just create masterpieces, it also makes art richer for us as an audience. Think about the last time you sat down to really listen to a piece of music. No phone, no distractions, just you and the sound. At first, it feels odd because we're used to multitasking, but the longer you sit, the deeper the music hits. Boredom trains you to actually experience art instead of skimming it. That's why concerts, museums, even a quiet moment with a book feels so powerful when you give them your full attention. The problem today is that most people don't give art that space anymore. We want bite-sized clips, quick hooks, instant gratification. Songs are skipped after 20 seconds. Articles are skimmed. Videos are sped up. We don't sit with anything long enough to let it change us. And in doing that, we miss the point. Art isn't meant to be consumed like fast food. It's meant to be savored, to pull you into boredom until you see something new in it. The Stoics would have called this the discipline of attention. Epictetus said, we should focus fully on whatever is in front of us. That applies to life, but also to art. If you can't sit with a painting, a piece of music, or even your own thoughts long enough to feel bored, you'll never see the beauty hiding underneath. So here's a challenge. Try consuming art the way it was meant to be consumed. Listen to an album from start to finish without checking your phone. Read a book without flipping to your notifications. Go to a museum and actually stand in front of one painting for 15 minutes. At first, your brain will scream, "This is boring." But if you stay with it, something shifts. You notice details you missed. You feel the emotion behind the work. You connect with it in a way you never could if you skimmed. Because boredom isn't just where art is made. It's where art is truly experienced. It's the quiet space that lets creativity speak, whether you're the one creating or the one receiving. And if you can reclaim that space, your life becomes richer, fuller, more alive. So don't run from boredom. Let it make you an artist, and let it teach you how to see like one. Point 11. Practical protocols to reclaim boredom. Here's the deal. It's one thing to talk about the value of boredom, but it's another to actually practice it in real life. We all know the theory by now. Boredom sparks creativity, builds discipline, clears your emotions, helps you find meaning. Great. But how do you actually make space for boredom in a world designed to kill it? You need protocols, simple, practical rules that break your addiction to constant stimulation and give boredom room to breathe again. The first one is obvious but powerful. Set a phone cutoff time. Pick an hour in the evening, say 7 or 8 p.m., when the phone goes down for the night. No endless scrolling in bed, no rabbit holes before sleep. Just you, your family, or your thoughts. At first, you'll feel twitchy. Your brain will beg for the screen. But over time, you'll notice your evenings feel calmer. You'll sleep deeper. And the quiet at night becomes a natural space for reflection instead of distraction. Second, no phones at meals. This one's simple, but it changes everything. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Leave the device in another room. Meals are for eating, talking, and being present. If you're alone, let yourself actually taste your food instead of inhaling it while scrolling. If you're with people, use the time to connect instead of staring at a screen. You'd be shocked at how much richer life feels when you reclaim even 30 minutes of undistracted time a day. Third, digital fasts. Once in a while, take a longer break, half a day, a full day, maybe even a weekend, with no social media, no mindless scrolling, no constant news updates. The first few hours will feel rough, like withdrawal. Your brain will scream, "Check it, you're missing something." But then the noise fades. You start noticing your surroundings. You feel lighter, calmer, more in control. It's like hitting reset on your nervous system. Here's another one. Leave your phone behind on purpose. Go for a walk, run errands, hit the gym, without the device. At first it feels strange. What if someone calls? What if you get bored? But that's exactly the point. Let yourself feel that discomfort. Notice how much your mind races. Notice how quickly you reach for a phone that isn't there. That's awareness. And with practice, it turns into freedom. The Stoics would have loved these protocols. They practiced intentional discomfort all the time. Epictetus told his students to rehearse poverty, to go without luxuries, so they'd remember they could survive without them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that life doesn't depend on externals. In our world, externals are screens, and practicing boredom by putting them down is our version of Stoic training. People will say, "But what if I miss something important? What if there's an emergency?" That's just fear talking. You can set your phone to allow calls from a few key contacts, family, close friends, in case of a real emergency. Everything else can wait. And here's the truth. It's rarely as urgent as you think. Twitter drama isn't an emergency. A new meme isn't an emergency. Even most emails can wait a few hours. The world will keep spinning if you unplug. So here's your challenge. Pick one of these protocols and start today. Phone cut off at night, no devices at meals, a half-day digital fast once a week, or a workout with no headphones. It doesn't matter which one. What matters is you create a little friction between yourself and the constant flood of stimulation, because boredom can't do its work if you never give it space. These protocols aren't about punishment. They're about freedom. They're about reclaiming your attention, your focus, your ability to be present. And once you put them into practice, you'll realize something powerful. Boredom isn't hard to find. It's always there, waiting. You just have to stop running from it. Point 12. The gift of emptiness. Here's the final truth about boredom. It's not a curse, it's a gift. We've been taught to see empty moments as problems to solve, as wasted time. But what if emptiness is exactly what we need? What if boredom isn't the absence of meaning, but the doorway to it? Think about it. Every day we chase stimulation like addicts. Music in our ears, screens in our hands, notifications buzzing non-stop. We fill every pause, every gap, every quiet second. But in doing that, we've forgotten something essential. Life isn't lived in constant noise. Life is lived in the spaces between. The walk with no agenda, the drive with no soundtrack, the silence before bed. Those empty moments aren't empty at all. They're full of potential. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote about stripping life down to its essentials, reminding himself that simplicity was strength. Seneca said that people fear stillness because it reveals how short life really feels. But they both agreed. The path to wisdom isn't in chasing more, it's in learning to be content with less. Emptiness, boredom, silence, those are the teachers. Here's the paradox. When you stop fighting boredom, when you allow emptiness to exist, it stops feeling empty. Suddenly you see what was always there. The quiet becomes peaceful instead of threatening. The pause becomes clarity instead of discomfort. The emptiness becomes space, space to think, to breathe, to be. That's the gift, and it doesn't just affect your mind, it changes how you live. When you stop running from boredom, you start noticing beauty in the smallest things, a conversation, a sunset, a sip of coffee. You realize that joy isn't in constant entertainment, it's in presence, and the only way to find presence is to embrace the emptiness we spend so much time avoiding. Think about the times you felt truly alive. Chances are they weren't the moments you were glued to a screen. They were the quiet ones, sitting on a beach, staring at the waves, lying in bed at night, talking with someone you love, walking alone under the stars. Those moments felt infinite, not because they were packed with excitement, but because they were spacious. That's boredom's hidden gift. It stretches time, it slows life down, it reminds you that you're here. But most people never get there. They're too busy escaping, too busy filling, too busy running, and that's the tragedy. They miss the very thing they're chasing. They miss peace, they miss meaning, they miss themselves. So here's the challenge. Stop treating boredom like the enemy. Stop filling every second just because you can. Try sitting with emptiness, not as a punishment, but as a practice. Let yourself breathe in silence. Let yourself feel the discomfort until it softens into calm. Because in that space, you'll find what no app, no playlist, no distraction can give you: clarity, presence, and a kind of happiness that doesn't depend on anything external. Boredom isn't wasted time, it's sacred time. It's the gift of emptiness that makes everything else meaningful. And if you can learn to see it that way, you won't just be less bored, you'll be more alive. So here's where it all comes together. We've spent this whole time talking about boredom, not as a curse, not as wasted time, but as one of the most powerful tools you'll ever have. Creativity, discipline, emotional clarity, deeper relationships, even discovering your purpose. All of it flows out of those quiet, empty moments we spend our whole lives trying to avoid. That's the paradox of modern life. The thing we fear the most is the very thing we need the most. Look around. Everyone's glued to their phones, chasing the next hit of dopamine, filling every second with noise. And yet, anxiety, depression, and emptiness are higher than ever. Why? Because we've lost the ability to be still. We've lost the ability to be bored. And without boredom, we lose creativity. We lose depth. We lose ourselves. But you don't have to live that way. You don't have to be another person stuck in the cycle of distraction. You can reclaim boredom. You can train yourself to sit with it, to lean into it, to let it do its work. Start small. 10 minutes of silence in your day. A meal without your phone. A walk without headphones. At first it'll feel weird. You'll feel restless, maybe even anxious. But that's just the detox. That's your brain unlearning its addiction to constant noise. Stick with it, and the silence starts to transform. Because boredom isn't empty, it's full of meaning, full of potential, full of life waiting to be noticed. The simple joys, your morning coffee, a laugh with a friend, the sound of the wind, come back into focus. The deeper questions: what am I here for? What matters most? Finally get a chance to rise, and the discipline to build the life you want starts to grow, all from the thing you thought you needed to escape. The Stoics would tell us this isn't optional. Marcus Aurelius wrote his reflections in silence, not because he had free time, but because he knew he couldn't lead without clarity. Seneca warned that life feels short, because we waste it on distractions instead of reflection. Epictetus pushed his students to practice discomfort so they wouldn't be slaves to their impulses. For them, stillness wasn't weakness, it was strength. And for us, boredom is the modern version of that stillness. So here's my challenge to you. Stop running. The next time you feel bored, don't kill it with a screen. Sit with it. Let it stretch. Let it make you uncomfortable, because in that discomfort, you'll find creativity, you'll find clarity, you'll find yourself. Boredom isn't the enemy, it's the gift. And if you're brave enough to accept it, it might just change your life.